Welcome to the show, everyone. My guest today is Michael Prince. Now, this was the first in-person interview that I've done on my podcast. So we did it back here. I've taken everything down since, well, actually, you can kind of see the table set up still. And we got this stuff over here. And, you know, I got these fancy microphones that I had full intent on using. And then we ended up not using it because we were actually able to sit fairly close together. So we use this microphone that's right here. But anyways, just super excited to share this one, partially because there's just a different energy that comes from actually being in a room with somebody and just having a very flowing conversation. And this was definitely that. It was a lot of fun. We got to dive into Mike's background and story of being an athlete, doing the hydrojet. So him and his wife actually own the local hydrojet company that, if you're not familiar with it, it's basically, you know, those like jet packs or moon boot type things that you see on the jet skis. They own that in this community that we live in called Kelowna, which is a very destination type place, like a beautiful lake. And anyways, Mike had his identity really tied tightly to that because he was a professional athlete in that space at one point, which, you know, who would have thought that that even existed? But Mike did. And he talked about what it was like just being in that world. And then naturally, how his life has progressed over the years. He's also been in the corporate world, in the sales space for a long time as well. And most recently, in the last couple of years, he ran into a point of his life where he just started to question, am I happy? What's going on here? I feel like there's a greater purpose to what I'm here to do on this earth. And then naturally he became a dad. He also has 2 young boys, just like me. So we've connected really closely. He lives literally 3 doors down the road from me. And Mike just shared very vulnerably, honestly, truthfully about his journey along the way, his discovery of personal work, spiritual work, breath work, some of the, we quote unquote, we talked about this, the dragons that he's met along the way, including getting diagnosed with Lyme disease within the last year and a bit, and how he's faced that and learned to actually embrace it and love it and change his story around it. And we just dove deep into a lot of really meaningful things in both of our lives, which is literally the kind of conversations that we have when we're not recording, you know, when we're hanging out at the tennis court, when we're walking on the street with our kids, when we're, you know, heading over to his place for a bonfire in the backyard with all the other neighbors. And it was just really fun to turn on the record button and actually share some of this with all of you. One, because I want all of you to meet Mike Prince. He's got an incredible presence to him, and what he's done in creating a ripple effect of change, not only in his life, in his family, but in his extended family as well, has been really inspiring to me. And I'll give Mike props right now too. He's also the one that encouraged me to just take the leap into doing cold plunging. And he actually told me, he's like, yeah, I got a horse trough in my backyard and I do the cold plunge. And I was like, dude, I got to see this. So I actually walked over there and said, that is pretty cool. And I know I can get one of those. And within like 3 days, I'd gone to the local, you know, horse supply shop here. And now I have a cold plunge on my deck and I do it every single day or almost every single day. And it's been it's my think tank. It's been so grounding for me. And now even I'm still constantly learning. And I just appreciate having a guy like Mike in my world, because he actually challenged me even on the podcast to say, I want you to sit in that cold tub, that cold plunge, and just do nothing. Be in the silence. Because normally what I do is I record myself and I talk through it. It's almost like a daily journal for me. But he's like, why don't you try this? Why don't you just try sitting in the silence and feel the cold on your skin and just get grounded in that? And I really appreciate having somebody in my life that can just reflect on that and that I can have these kind of conversations with. So without further ado, let's go ahead and give this one a listen. Okay, so we're recording already. Okay. And I got some notes here, but just a conversation, man.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for coming here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure. And I appreciate Appreciate the invite. I've been looking forward to it actually all week.
I know.
Yeah.
You and I have had so many great conversations just in the last like month or two.
Totally.
And naturally for me, every time, like I create a lot of content. So I walk away from our conversations and I'm thinking like, man, I wish we would have just recorded that. But
yeah,
of course, in the moments, there's always a different authenticity that comes through in conversations. So,
totally. There's that genuine aspect when, the cameras aren't rolling and
yeah,
you can spit things freely.
Yeah. But I am genuinely looking forward to this for a few different reasons. One, to just tell my network and people that are watching who you are, what your background is. We'll dig into all of that juicy stuff of the messy journey, Yeah. And then ultimately just, fast forwarding to today, what we've each experienced personally just in the last couple of months, even too, because there's so many things. And I've got a bunch of notes here that are going to kind of guide us. But one of the elements of this podcast, and I'll just read it out here because I tell people this whenever I do the podcast, is Brene Brown's quote. So one day you will tell your story of how you overcame what you went through, and it'll be somebody else's survival guide. So
yeah, I absolutely love that quote. Obviously I've heard it before because I've listened to some of the podcasts, and every time I hear that, it still hits home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good foundational piece too, right? To just speak about the truth, which I think is maybe another piece of what we'll talk about here is like, what does that mean exactly? It's different for everybody,
Yep.
But then knowing that truth, when spoken vulnerably and honestly, can really be of service. And in fact, you got this book. I'm just going to grab it here right now.
Yep.
So Mike brought this book over right here, the Dad Tell Me book. And you want to just explain what this is about?
Yeah. So, well, we can go back to the purpose of why you created this podcast, right? The heart of why you want it. And yes, speaking your truth is one of those things, but who are you speaking it for? The little feet that are pitter pattering upstairs,
which we're going to hear
right
throughout this whole recording. There's no doubt.
So this book here is pretty neat. It's called Dad Tell Me.
Yeah.
And there's versions of it, but what it does is there's many prompting questions in here that your kids and we can resonate with this being big kids now and our fathers, questions that you just don't ask your dad as you get older.
Yeah.
But when I looked in this book, I was like, man, I wish I knew this stuff about my dad.
Totally.
And 90% of it, I don't. Right. Yeah. So this gives us an opportunity to change that. And as our kids get older, we fill this out throughout the years, and then it's a gift to them.
Yeah.
And so I know that really quality and cool relationship you have with your kids and what you want to create and the message and legacy that you want to leave for them. So that would be a neat token to, put some of that down on paper. Right.
It's beautiful, man. And it is a foundational piece of why I decided to do this podcast. And I know we've been sharing lots of messages and back and forth, even just in the last couple of weeks, talking about, we were just referencing that Jordan Peterson interview on Joe Rogan's podcast, which was 4 hours long. For anybody that hasn't watched it, go check it out. But like, I pulled out like 3 things from that podcast that actually stood out, right? There might've been 1,000 topics, but one of them was just this idea of like speaking your truth. And in fact, I wrote this down because I didn't want to mess up exactly what Jordan Peterson said, but he talked about this Sermon on the Mount where the problems of the day will take care of themselves. Don't worry about the future. And then he goes on to say, that's not at all what that is actually saying. What he heard on that was align yourself firmly with that which is the highest. So what is that, right? Beauty, truth, courage. He's like, yes, all of those things, love, the desire that everything will flourish rather than suffer, the integrating of all things good, right? Some people refer to this as God, whatever, aspire to that. And then he said, concentrate on the day, right? Focus on that day. You won't get what you want ultimately when you tell the truth, but how the hell do you know what you want? There were so many pieces of this, man, where I was just like, what?
You could go deep on that. That's very thought-provoking for sure.
Yeah.
When you say 1,000 insights in that 4-hour podcast, you're certainly correct. It was, I had to listen to it in chunks because I actually had to process a lot of the things he was saying, as you do here. If you really break that apart, you could go different directions. And what you see on the surface isn't really how it presents itself. Very, very smart man.
Totally. And tying it back kind of to this book that you were referencing here, this Dad Tell Me, is so part of the reason for doing the podcast was to really step into a place of, let's be honest, it's uncomfortableness, because just the speaking of your own truth. But even if you started off like I have for the last 30 episodes of interviewing other people, there's still an element of kind of like, oh shit, am I going to ask the right questions? What if I don't know how to guide the conversation? Like just all the things that come up naturally. And then now that I'm actually starting to speak more of my truth from my own perspective and my beliefs at this current time, knowing that they'll change and evolve. I know that if I'm authentic in doing that, that my kids are going to see this as like a blueprint of my life and how I've shaped my beliefs, you know?
Totally. I mean, the topics you're covering, if you go back in your last 30 plus episodes, you're absolutely right. They're chapters. They're going to get to read through and listen to and look at Dad's opinions and watch you evolve as well, right? And really resonate that. And as they look through that and then further go through their own things in life, be able to refer back to them and be like, oh, you know, Dad lended me this piece of wisdom in this episode. And or some of the guests that you had, right? So you're really creating those curious conversations with each individual that you sit down with, and it's expanding your knowledge, and then in turn, when they watch it down the road, it's expanding theirs, right? And it's special.
It's pretty incredible when you actually ground yourself in that. I know Gary Vaynerchuk talks about this too when he's guiding people on like creating content.
Yeah.
He says, think about your kids' watching this in the future. You want a content strategy?
Yeah, no kidding.
You know, like show up with integrity, with authenticity, with vulnerability, with the truth, knowing that you have to be humble and empathetic and compassionate, because whenever you ground the truth in this is the absolute truth, it's tainted, right? There is no absolute truth.
You're absolutely right, because you look at a lot of the content out there, and a lot of it has its various topics, but it's business focused. It's for the highest the highest grossing amount they can bring in terms of sales or revenue or whatever.
A tactic, a strategy.
You got it. Versus, I agree, Gary puts out a lot of real raw things, and that's amazing. I've never really heard that perspective of him saying that. But when you think about it that way, you're certainly going to think twice before you get in front of the video or the mic, because, you know, from a 30,000 or 60, 80, 90, 100-year view, when that's a living document and you know, people that far out are watching it, you better be speaking from here.
Speaking from the heart. Absolutely. And I think this here, like the idea of actually writing it down too, because we were talking about this a bit before we started recording, which, by the way, we just kind of naturally started recording there. It's so cool how that happens too. But I knew that we'd have a great chat, man. But I was saying that, you know, I'm doing cold plunging now, and I'm doing it consistently, and I have you to thank for that. And I want to dive into that a bit too, but I'm recording myself almost like a self-journal every single night.
Very cool.
Partly because it actually helps me take my mind off the cold. So there's a distraction element to it, you know, but also for the thing that we're just talking about, which is like, I want to get these thoughts out of my head, because I know that if I say them out loud, then they start to manifest, right? But there's a lot of power in writing as well.
Big time. I'm going to go back a quick step and challenge you now that you just said what you just said. If you're doing when you do your cold plunge tonight, I want you to not document or not speak during it. I want you to sit in silence, because you just said it gives you a distraction to get through it. That's, you know, you want to sit in it. You want to sit in that and see what goes on up here.
That's interesting you say that, man, because one of the things that's come up for me a lot in the last couple of days is the sitting in the silence. And not even from that context of like, you're in a cold plunge, sit in the silence, but
totally in general,
just in conversations, you know, as somebody that is on this side of the podcasting conversation, but also even just in talking to people. You know, I was mentioning to you that Danielle and I are creating a collective right now, and we're just having conversations with people. And that's what I'm becoming very aware of, is that every single person that I talk to is either at a mastery level or is consciously aware of wanting to master being comfortable in the silence.
Yeah, it is a game.
It's
huge,
a game,
right?
man.
We all
And it's a game.
look
It's
at
a
how
game.
much content. Yeah, look how much content you put out. You talk professionally for a living, pretty much, right? And you're a highly intelligent
Talking's
individual,
easy.
and
That doesn't make me uncomfortable.
totally. But
Yeah.
sit down in a room with the lights off for 40 minutes, and you want to talk about a challenge for your average person. That's a challenge. You know, the amount of thoughts that come rushing in. If you think about the amount of content, never mind that you put out, but that you consume on a daily basis, right? I know you send me stuff late night, sometimes YouTube videos. I'm like, geez, Trev's still up. I was sleeping by then. I watch it in the morning, but you're constantly bringing that all in. So to sit in the silence and clear the mind is a challenge, but it's also a blessing once you begin to harness it, because as we've talked about the cold tank as well, I referenced it to the think tank, and I still do. I love it. It
is the think tank.
And that's not just cold. I think if you're sitting in an infrared sauna or something like that, but you embrace the silence, you know, you're not listening to music. I've had some of my, I feel, biggest breakthroughs or ideas come in those moments where I just close my eyes and you know, you go through the struggle in your mind. Damn, it's cold. No, it's really cold in here. No, it's really fucking cold. You know, or the infrared.
We can swear on here, by the way, too.
Right,
There's no censoring.
I was like, not sure here.
Yeah.
Same with infrared. Damn, it's hot in here. Damn, you process that all in the beginning. You get through the suffering and the struggle. Once that's gone, as you know, in the cold tank, it's your first 30 seconds. Your fight or flight kicks in, and then you're like, I gotta get the hell out of here. No, breathe. Yeah. Once you're past that, then you can clock some time, and your mind really starts to accept it, and creativity begins.
Yeah, I'm so glad that the conversation went this direction, because the notes that I had on all the things that I wanted to talk with you about is naturally just about, like, who is Mike? What brought you to this point? You know, what were the identities that you lived through and that you attached to, both as an athlete, as a sales guy. And it's funny talking about that too, but like, one of the greatest strengths in sales is literally comfort in the silence, right?
Yeah.
It's asking that question and allowing for the feedback.
Waiting.
Yeah. And letting the other person really process it and then actually say something out loud where it becomes their idea. Like, it's
totally, you're letting them prompt their own questions, essentially, if you're doing it properly. Absolutely. It's, and then listening for the hidden gems of a solution.
Yeah.
You know, it's, if we look at, not to go down the sales pattern too much, but
hey, we're going to go down whatever path we go down here, man.
If you look at, you know, old sales is dead. The classic soliciting call, and anybody senses that. I don't answer a bloody call on my phone that I know isn't in my phone or I don't recognize. And don't get me wrong, I'm kind when I do get caught on those calls, because we've all been there. We started there. I started walking the streets door to door and in businesses, and it was awkward as hell. It was painful. It was everything in between, but it certainly taught you a lot. But today's sales now it's marketing. It is. It's, you need to find the need and align it, rather than you can't force it anymore.
Yeah. And all of these pieces are so connected too. And again, this is where our conversation, you'll find, we'll dance between these topics and come back and forth between them. But, you know, we were just looking at a graphic on my screen here a moment ago, talking about this, like, center grounding of, like, self-actualization. If we were to just summarize it in one word, you know, like gratefulness and oneness and all of these things. But then you have all of these outer pieces as well that make up the entirety of what it is to be a human being and life and everything else. And it can feel, I guess, overwhelming at times, right? And it doesn't matter if it's in your career, in your business, in your family life, your finances, all of that kind of stuff. There's a sense of uneasiness and uncomfortableness that comes from that, you know?
Yeah, big time.
And, you know, having that grounding place of, like, presence in the middle, I think, is so critically important, and can be translated and pushed out into all areas of life. Like, how we show up in our presence with our kids, for example, is a direct reflection on how they're going to live in this world, you know, and react to different situations. And all this stuff, it just all interconnects, doesn't it? It's not just one thing that you can focus on. And I'm going to go master this sales.
No, I mean,
it's like, silence is sales.
Oh, totally.
Presence is sales.
And as we know, as we just spoke about, it constantly changes, right? And then there's the performance aspect, and this leads into the idea we've spoken about, right? And what can help create human performance and airy gaps in the sales world that people are missing. It's not all Excel sheets and numbers and amount of calls lead to XYZ.
Touches, right?
Where's the human performance aspect, right? Where's how many times did you journal this month?
Yeah.
How many times did you go in your cold tank? How many times? And that goes well beyond sales. These are health habits we're talking about now. And I can tell you, to circle back to the cold tank, I've had an energy about me this week. I've been dancing in my office in between calls and all that, and just so much fire this week. And if I dissect it, which I did last night, I was like, why have I had this crazy energy this week?
Yeah.
I have had some neat things I've been doing. I actually did another interview on Tuesday, which is crazy. I'm not like a popular guy or anything, but
yes, no, you are, man.
A local, just a local fun, cool thing called Park Bench. But and then I was looking forward to this one, but really, it was the cold tanks I've gotten back to. I broke through the ice,
literally,
and I'm getting back into it each night. And I've been doing hot and cold, actually. So vasoconstriction just pumps the blood through your body, heals and the immune, fires the immune system. And so I think that's been a big game changer for me this week, on top of, the work and the things I've been looking forward to and getting some clarity on some items. But that's the standout one that, man, if we could influence people, just throw them in there.
Yeah, it's that holistic approach to all of this. I think that's what we're both talking about in a general sense here, is just, I'm a very visual person. So I keep referencing kind of what I built there in these bubbles, right? So if you think of all these, outstanding circles, it's all connected. But a lot of times our 3D self, our human self, wants to like isolate something of like, I'm going to go create mastery in this. And then you kind of lose sight or lose track of your health, or your fitness, or your mindfulness, or whatever it is. And I think this is naturally allowing our conversation even to go in all the directions I wanted it to, because I want to back everything up and have you tell your story of what got you to here. Because I know some of the deep conversations that we've had have been around this idea of like a holistic approach to all things in life. But then let's wrap it around something like sales, or let's wrap it around something like parenting.
Yeah.
And look at these pieces that make up, like, what does it mean to have a holistic, conscious parenting approach, or a holistic, conscious sales approach, even too, if we're using the same language, right? So I don't know where you want to start with that, because whenever I ask that question, you got one person that says, well, I was born in, and then the next person starts at the age of 35 when this one thing happens.
We could certainly go back quite a ways into,
and feel free to do it, man. We got lots of time here. I have no time limits on how long this one could be.
It might get to that point. We might get there, but I'll start at somewhere a little bit more realistic. Maybe about 10 years ago. I would say, and led to where I am now, because it was a time where actually I was working the same job corporately. I had gap years in between.
You've been in it for 10 years now.
7, because I took a few years off to start the local business and do some other things, travel and compete, and I'll get into a little bit of that. But I found the sport of HydroFlight, or flyboarding, which is, just to give a quick synopsis for if people don't know what that is, it's the one that's attached to a Sea-Doo. You're strapped into wakeboard boots, so you have jets at your feet. We'll get Trev doing it in the spring. And you go up in the air with the projections of the jets that are redirected from the Sea-Doo. So when that first came out, as you can imagine, it was pretty mind-blowing. And I had a client who called me. He was the first distributor in Canada, wanted to set up his website. So I said, awesome, I'll do that for you, but let's sit down and have a coffee about this. And so chatted with him about that, partnered from a sales perspective to help with selling boards. And then I found out there was the first ever competition in Qatar. So I said, well, I'm not going. So flew there as a spectator, and watched it and said, I got to get involved in this. And then got in that world and opened my own location here in Kelowna. I worked with that individual for a couple of years. Partnership fell through, as they do. And I really found myself then. I found something that I wanted to commit to that fired me up. And then started this location here and started competing myself. So started training, and it was an ego explosion. You know, you're involved in the latest and greatest thing. Everybody wants a piece of it to check it out.
Yeah.
You're Mr.
Can't
Cool.
help but turn your eyes to it when you see it, right? Especially anybody that doesn't know Kelowna too. We've got this big bridge that connects one side of the lake to the other. When you drive across it, the downtown's like right there.
Yeah. Oh, and
So
we purposely planted ourselves along the lake wall always.
It's your best marketing right there,
the
right?
Bridge,
Yeah.
There was never any car accidents, thankfully. It was a concern. I was like, does insurance cover this?
Yeah.
But it was by far one of the highlights of my life, that time period.
Yeah.
You know, I got to travel the world. I was healthy to a degree, you know, because we were partying and doing our thing, but I was training physically all the time and eating pretty well and working out lots. And I had a brotherhood, which we traveled with, we supported one another, we competed together. It was what was incredible. Now, why this is all relevant is because that quieted down, the dust settled, just as I'm sure you experienced with your hockey career, right?
Yeah.
Peaks and valleys, and every athlete will experience, because the road ends.
It does.
And nobody tells you it's going to end. You're not really prepared for it. And you've attached your identity to that so tightly, created your brand around it, and
your routine, everything, like just
everything.
your daily.
That's what everybody got to know me for. Oh, Mike, when's your next competition? When are you doing this? How's the business? And it got to a point where in my mind, I wasn't really there anymore. So I was almost lying. I was like, I don't know. When in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to compete anymore. This is done. This is, you know, I'm having kids now, and it's not because of that. It's the industry's kind of died out, and we all kind of slowed down. But there's a gray area there where, like, okay, well, who am I now? How do I define myself? You know, I had to ask myself those questions inwardly, and it's a very lonely place because nobody else knows I'm in this. You don't tend to talk it out loud. In fact, this is probably the only time I ever have talked this out loud.
Yeah.
But I know the path at which led me where I am, and this is where it spawned from. Because early last year, well, let's even prior to that, I'd say late 2020, let's put it. You know, I have a great small business. I have a great paying corporate job, which is from home and pretty super flexible, and I'm really good at it. I'm a high achiever. But I went into the new year, and I just wasn't happy. I wasn't happy. I knew, and I was like, why? I love my kids. I love my wife. I could not figure it out. And then I wasn't feeling. I was like, it's someone's birthday. Oh, this cool thing happened. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I can't live like this. This is, I knew in my heart of hearts, I was like, this is not healthy. And I didn't go down a dark path or anything. I was probably drinking a little more than I should have, casually. Again, not affecting any part of my life, but my own head and clarity. And so I started to look a little more inward and just ask myself, well, who am I now? You know, how do I fix this? What do I do?
Google.
Oh, yeah. Right? And I was like,
I'm just saying that out loud though, because
totally, but that's a rabbit hole. We know that, right?
It's so you want to search somewhere for an answer, right? You're looking external all the time when that first comes up. At least I know I can speak from my own perspective, right? When you hit that point where you're like, there's got to be more here.
Absolutely. And my first step is I knew how to be healthy again. So I said, slow down the casual drinks. Let's cut that out. Let's start working out again. I was 225 pounds at the time. So I put on a lot of extra weight, 25 pounds of extra weight. And I've been following a friend of mine for a couple of years. That's, at the time was really rather out there spiritually and watching what he was doing, but there was fitness involved. There was this and that. And it's very interesting how we aligned. Yeah. Because I've been watching him forever, but I still was like, I'm not going into that program. Yeah. However,
out there, that's the word I just heard you use, where I was thinking like, oh, that's where your head was at that point, right? Where it was like, oh, that's a bit out there. That's foreign. That seems a bit scary.
To know me now, that was only a year ago, just a little over a year ago. Yeah. And I'm deep now. There's no way I'm looking back. Right. And that's how quick it's happened in the exploration.
Well, and I think real quick, when did you and I actually first meet? It was probably maybe spring of last year.
I don't know.
it feels like it's all been
I
accelerated.
think we
because
probably
of-
crossed paths a little earlier than
yeah,
that.
but
in the
never really
winter,
had any.
but never really conversed too much or
But then in April we went and played tennis, right? I
Yeah.
think it was like probably like April, May or something like that.
Yep.
And then we actually never went back to it again. And anyways,
And
well, I don't
I'll
want to
get
sidetrack.
to why that happened as well. And but yeah, so my sister-in-law actually reached out knowing I was in the fitness game and all this stuff and entrepreneur, and she was looking to start her own journey in terms of she's been a fitness coach for years, but didn't really know how to shape the business and where to go. And so I was like, okay, well, I got this good buddy Cam, who's in it. He seems to be doing really, really well. And I think he can help you. I think he can be a bit of a mentor for you. So I booked a call with Cam, and he's like, absolutely, I'll help Megs out and tell her who mentored me in this journey. And so align that. And then Cam said, well, how are you doing?
Yeah.
And we got into a conversation that led to a longer conversation that opened up his course and his program. And I didn't have to think long on it.
Yeah.
Because when he said, when we were talking about emotion and missing pieces, and it brought some of this out, I was like, this is what I need. It was that light bulb moment where I was like, I need to at least explore this. I know how to do the physical part, and that was part of his program. I know how to eat well, but it had helped to have the accountability.
Yeah.
But this spiritual aspect, that's cool. You're bringing in a new modality for these 3 different components. How's that going to work?
Yeah.
So I jumped in. I committed. I invested both financially and 16 weeks of my life to a whole slew of things, a workout program, only 3 days a week.
Yeah.
But I committed seriously to my food program as well. But then there was a ton of little life habits and this spiritual and breathwork component that came in. And when I just found when I had this combination, a lightness started to happen over me, and I was coming back. I was waking up in the morning with my kids. I wasn't throwing on the TV for them and making breakfast or coffee. I was taking my kids to my favorite view in the corner of our house where we can see the sunrise in the mountains and sitting with them, having conversations with them. I was, sitting in the backyard by myself, putting my feet in the grass and being grounded and feeling. And it had come back. I was driving on the highway home from downtown. I remember this because I have my favorite view, right? As you get down into West Kelowna, past Supercenter and stuff on the left, the rocks. And I was feeling that. It was all coming back. So I had lost this, and that really helped me pull it in. So for those listening, I mean, everybody's gone through this. We know it at different stages in your life. You feel numb, and this stuff brings it back. And it's not magic. It's just practice. And it's being conscious, and it's acknowledging it all and working on it. And again, it's like a physical practice. You can't go to the gym once and expect to be Arnold Schwarzenegger and be massive the rest of your life. You got to practice it, but we can keep going on this story. And so come April, when we were playing tennis, I was in probably the best shape I've been in years since my competing days.
Killer shape, man.
Yeah, and
I remember thinking, damn, this guy's in good shape. I gotta get up, start doing something right now.
That's it. And I was excited to get back at tennis. I had done tennis and played tennis in years, and I was like, cool, man. I met a neighbor, someone who seems to be on the same level, and we can have some chats and blah blah blah. And but I'd been having these joint pains.
I remember your hand was really sore when we were playing tennis even too.
Yeah.
And he didn't speak much about it then.
I didn't know much about it then. I'd starting to feel it all, and I'd been putting my body through a lot, but recovering properly, and nutrition was great. And so I could not pinpoint it, figured out test with doctors. And then it was getting worse with my hands and my knees and my feet, all joints really. And then, when we were playing tennis, I had pivotal moments of when I noticed this. One, my wristwatch started to not fit. It was the very first, and I was like,
so it's like swollen, you mean? Like you're
you see it still. I'm usually much bigger than I am now, but skinny guy generally. So I was like, ego told me, I've been working out tons, maybe my wrists are getting bigger. Of course. And kept going for test after test, blood test, everything negative. You're healthy, you're good, you're blah blah blah. So I ended up sidetrack. When we played tennis, I knew I had certain functions in my body and I could play, but when we played, that's pretty shit. And I was frustrated. I was like, why? Like my hand wouldn't formulate around the racket properly, or when it hit, it was awkward. When I threw, it was thrown too far back because my hand, I can't fully straighten it. It's curved.
Yeah.
So there's different moments. And of course, again, ego tells me like, you know, I don't know Trev very well at this time. I'm trying to be a little bit impressive. It's beyond the conversation, you know, and showing I can play tennis, but I was doing terrible. And so when you checked in to play again, I kept avoiding it. I kept, and so I just kept being, no, I'm busy. I got this going on. But really, I had this physical element going on that I really didn't want to share too much about. I didn't know much about it.
Yeah.
Anyways, fast forward a little bit, I hired a naturopath, and I was diagnosed with Lyme disease. We finally found it. Well, we did many more tests with her, and then she said, listen, in Canada, it's not really recognized, but we can pay for a private test. Cool, I'll shell over $1,600. We did it. I had it back within a few days. I had 4 different diseases within me from a tick bite.
Really?
And so, you know, it most would be upset or scared or sad. And sure, I was some of those things, but I had an answer. I had an answer to me. So I was like, cool. Fuck yeah, let's target this now.
Yeah,
let's
go. At least you have a common enemy that you know what you can go after.
Yeah,
right?
And we worked the timeline back, and we had cut 6 big trees down in our backyard in March. And I was head to toe for 10 days carrying trees, going through the, you know, the grinding machine, throwing them away. And so it all made sense.
That was where the tick came from.
You got it.
Yeah.
But that, as you can imagine, led me even deeper on this journey, you know, and my physical was at a peak, and then it started to decline. I had to go on antibiotics, which killed all my muscle mass, and it was sore and tired and cranky and blah, 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 and so on and so forth. So to go from building myself back up from that dark place, you know, coming full circle back to being like, from that time, I've lost 45 pounds of muscle, basically, due to antibiotics, due to lack of activity and all of that stuff. So I had to find a mental toughness. I had to be resilient and say, okay, well, physical is not everything. You know, and this could go way back to why my physical has always been important to me from when I was a kid, but it has been, and I have had to learn this year that it's not everything. But beyond that, it's more for me. I was like, I'm also a protector. I have a family that you know, these are the little fears that hit us. I was like, if I get in a physical altercation where I have to protect my family, I don't feel like I can. And that terrified me. But the point is, it led me to going deeper on this breathwork practice, looking at looking inward more, and spending more time with me and reflecting. And the power that has come from that, I'll tell you, is unbelievable. And I've had some spiritual treatments. I did that Cambo treatment in December, not too long ago. But there's a lot that led up to that. I've done a balance of general practitioner antibiotics with a ton of holistic stuff. I can't name the amount of holistic medicine I've taken and take today. But it really led me to a place where today, this is still within my body. It could be gone, actually. I don't know. I've had a lot of improvement. I am going to do a test again in about a month to see where we're at. But I'll tell you, it has taught me a ton, and I'm at a place mentally where I have told this thing, I love it. And I have thanked it for coming upon me, for the lessons it's taught me, for the patience, for the suffering and the pain, because it's all taught me a lot. And it's allowed me to say goodbye to a lot of pieces of myself that weren't serving me. And further to that, it's brought me to, I believe, a future journey where I can now serve others. Right. This is, there's a book, and I haven't read it yet. I ordered it months and months ago, but it's called The Hero's Journey. And it's, this is a piece of my initiation. And if I really look at this is scary. And
it's your dragon.
And some people are going to, look at this and be call crazy a little bit. But if I really look at this early in last year, when I found this journey initially, and I was so fired up about it, I called my buddy Cam. I was like, Cam, I want to get involved in your program. I want to be a partner. I want to invest. How do I do this? But I was like, calm down. The universe will take care of that if we're going to get there, and blah, blah, blah. And anyways, at that time I felt inadequate a little bit. So I was like, I'm not trained in this. How can I teach others when, I don't believe I've done a massive achievement myself, physically or spiritually. So I remember talking to my wife and saying, like, I need to plan a bike ride to Alaska, or I need to do this
extreme,
or that.
right?
Totally. And I was like, I'm going to document it. I'm going to hire a team.
Like
I'm
the
going to
cold
get sponsors. I'm going to do all this shit.
Yeah.
And so my point is, I was asking the universe. And I don't bike ride, by the way. That was the point.
Yeah,
Even more
challenge,
so. I
right?
was like, I'm going to
bring it
learn.
on.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I had put out and was asking the universe for a physical challenge.
The
universe delivered.
Yeah.
Maybe not in a way I wanted it to, but it delivered.
Yeah.
And I'm going through it, and I've been through it, and it's taught me and brought me to a place in life I never thought I would be. And I believe help influence some people already through the work I've had to do myself. And we're just getting started, but be careful what you wish for. But don't, because if you put it out into the universe, positive, negative, whatever, that's what you get back. And that's at the root of this as well, is people need to learn energy wise, we do manifest big time.
Yeah.
Right. And that is positive or negative. If you wake up and go to sleep with those thoughts, that's influencing your day. And when we talk about kids, that's even more important. From when they're in mom's belly to before they leave the house.
Yeah.
It's energy. It's, what they're feeling in the house and daily and everything. And so that's why now I love this. I think it's my mission. And I truly believe that, a big part of my life has to be devoted to this now, especially in the climate we're in today. In the last couple of years, people need this stuff more than ever. It's so sad to see the struggles and know that there are some simple answers if people can commit to it.
Yeah. I want to dig into the changing of the story, because I think it's a natural transition for us to talk about that. But I want to share something really quickly that just came up for me too on that, the idea of like manifesting everything in our lives, not just the good, but also the bad, which we can coin the bad as not actually being bad too, and embracing the struggle and all that kind of stuff. And it took me a while to actually get my head to that place where I could even say that out loud and believe it,
Totally.
But it is true. But what I remember for myself personally was over like 10 years or so, from like 2008 to like 2018, I lived in a state of, I want to call it out for what it is, jealousy, where I saw other people in my space of what I was doing on the entrepreneurship and the business side of things starting to rise. At least from my perception, I was seeing this like celebrity status. And it was Lewis House specifically, right? With Lewis, I saw Lewis and I at a very similar place in like 2008, 2009. And then I saw all of a sudden his stuff took off, and there was jealousy and anger and just kind of like, no, why am I not there?
Yeah.
And then what I associated it to though was I thought, well, he's got more of a heartfelt story. He was his athlete and he got injured. So he was on his sister's couch, and it was like the hero's journey story. Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't actually even reflect on this until like a couple of years ago, but I remember looking back at it now and thinking like, I wished I had a more painful story that I could tell that would actually allow people to resonate with who I was and the pain and the journey that I went on. And what happened, or how that manifested for me, was Shar and I went through 2 preterm births at 19 and 23 weeks, like really long on in the pregnancies. Both of them actually, the second one was actually deemed like a birth. So we had to go through like funeral papers and all of that stuff, The other one was just before it, but it didn't hit me until later where I was like, I believe I created that.
Yeah.
Like I created this desire for a pain that was so painful that I would have never, ever wished it if I knew that I had that power to create it.
Totally.
Yeah. But on that note too, I also believe that, and again, this is part of the work that I've been doing, and we've talked about this lots, the idea of like making choices and creating in a state of pain and suffering versus a pain or a state of bliss and joy. And you kind of alluded to it of like, I love the shit out of this disease.
Yeah. Totally.
You know?
And you
it took a while to get there though. Hey.
And you can look at your journey too a little bit, and you can say, would you have, not that experience was anything you'd wish upon anybody ever that you went through, but would you have maybe the same love you have for your two kids upstairs had you not gone through that?
No, that's the duality on it. It's like there's such a blessing, and
totally right. You every moment, every second, every breath they take now, you cherish, and because
they likely wouldn't be here. I don't know, but
totally
they likely wouldn't be. If we had two kids before them.
Yeah, and that's how we. So many of us in life go through so many challenging times and things, and for me, I never expected it, but you know what? There's so many people going through so many worse things. Right. And so it's you always have to look at the reverse coin, and you do always have to find the love. If you lead with love, you win every single time.
Yeah.
When we talk about, we were talking about earlier, even with debates, even with when you get passionate about topics, it's you have to kind of flip the coin and keep focused on what's important, because our anger and our emotion, it's not that they're not real, but they're not a healthy way to lead.
Yeah.
You're blinded for sure. If you think about put it this way, and I'm sure you can resonate pretty quickly with this. If you think about any emotional decision you've made in your life, or a decision you've made during a time of anger or frustration, do you think it was an effective one? Generally speaking, right?
But you don't know until you reflect back on it, or you're more present to be in the moments of recognizing when you're making an emotional decision. Totally. Being self-aware.
Yeah.
Having the emotional intelligence and the ability to self-regulate in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Like just that language, even I couldn't have said out loud 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
But it took some major breakdowns to get to that place.
Yeah. And it's again, if you could only instill simple habits with everybody. We've really tried to do it around our house with our kids, because we have, as you know, we've got two dogs, one really massive one that he gives you this much space in your life anytime, and he's right there. And then we have the two little guys who are always me, I need this, and we love them to death, but it tests your patience. And so we've had a bit of a switch in our house where, and honestly, I could say from 4 months ago, 6 months ago, it's amazing. You don't hear outbursts from either parent anymore. And of course we got to that point where we would yell or whatever and get frustrated, but we're taking deep breaths. We're laughing at it. We're looking at each other and laughing. And it's like, it's just stepping outside of that emotion, stepping outside of that moment, just being conscious in general, to say, okay, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. That's enough. Because you can stop what would normally come next, versus if you just let that take over and, okay, I can feel I'm getting red. I'm about to say green. Right. And become the Incredible Hulk. But you take that breath, or you just take that moment to acknowledge the way you're feeling. And it's such a game changer. And then it does turn into love almost right away, because I think about, if I were to yell at my kid, I'm not going to feel good about that afterwards. If I'm to scold the dog, I don't even feel great about that afterwards.
Yeah.
But if you have that moment and that switch, generally, I'm like, I want to hug him instead, because I know what my old me would have done, or I know what a moment of frustration would have done, and it would have, hurt his feelings or scare him if I yell because of frustration, anything of that nature, right? Or storm off. And so it's amazing when we have that switch, and it's just being conscious, which the way I say that is very simple. It's not simple.
No,
it's a practice again, right? And our average person doesn't have that, because it's as simple as ignorance, not knowing, unfortunately. And so that's why I love this work. I love seeing people come into it and see those changes.
Yeah, there's tools for this, right? That's the thing. I think that, like, the intellectual brain, anybody that's watching and listening to this, there may be parts of even what both of us are saying where you're kind of like, okay, I kind of like the vibe on this, but like, where do I start? And I think of, and in fact, I'm looking at it right now. There's a sheet of paper over there that I printed off that is just this hierarchy of, so you resonate with something we're saying, and you're saying, I want some of that too, right? I want to be a more conscious parent. Well, where do you start? Intention. Say it out loud. I have intent on becoming a more conscious parent. Done.
Write it down.
Next thing, behaviors. what micro behaviors can you make a change on? And we talked about that with Jordan Peterson, right? It's like, seize the day. What can you do today in this moment, in this hour, in this minute, in this moment?
Totally.
And then start to build habits of consistency. And then the habits then turn into ways of being. And now you're already, past this point where you're on to the next thing, where that you can actually reverse engineer all of these things. Like, I think about it even, you talked about this program that you enrolled in. I start on Monday.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. 12 weeks now. But there's a part of me that's kind of like, holy shit, like, where do I start? It's like, I don't think I eat that bad. But then when I actually track what I eat, and then I think about it, I'm like, I eat a lot of chocolate. I like my sweets, man. And then I think about the exercise side of things too. And it's like, I'm not in terrible shape, but I'm not in shape. Like, I'm physically, the 100 burpees that we did during the challenge, both of us were in a couple weeks ago.
Oh my gosh.
Like, dude, I felt that for like 5 days. Yeah. But again, I just ground back in. Well, my intention is that I want to be able to, you use the reference of like, protect my family.
Yeah.
Sure. There's a grounding point, The other piece for me is I want to be able to hop on a surfboard and take my kids and feel like I can protect them, knowing that I have to also be at the mercy of the ocean and allow flow.
If you all were to fall off and they were to drift away, can you swim to them? Can you grab them? Like, totally. Those are the little things, right? As a protector, how we think. Yeah.
So then, the entirety of all of that though, and this is, I guess, where I'm getting to, and this is where I'd like us to maybe talk about the like changing of the story as the foundational starting point on that, because the overall big picture of like health and fitness and finances and security and just all of the things that make up life, these bubbles, it's a lot.
Absolutely.
Until you ground back into, and this is maybe going to go deeper than what we want to go to, but like just this oneness of like knowing that you have the ability to impact all of it in a positive way.
Yeah.
You have to be patient, and you have to address the root.
You got to be massively patient. It's funny you say that. We talked about Gary Vee earlier, but I heard a quote from him this week. And he was an older gentleman that he was talking with, and he was asking, I've done X and it's been wrong and I've failed and blah, blah, blah. And Gary says, do it again. Do it for 5 years. For 5 years. Yeah. You'll get it right. But again, as we know, this is a common theme in today's world. Everybody's instant grat, right? Everyone's I do something. Where's my reward? What is it? What is it? Like, come on, man. It's
the phone, right?
Totally. And it's our kids, it's next generation. It's insane. And we're all guilty of it. Big time. Yeah. Right. And fitness, this journey, and breathwork's another one. Like everything you look at that has a mastery to it or that you can build habits around, people think if it doesn't happen instantly, they're doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. It's not the case. It's a long game.
Yeah.
Life is a marathon, right? And being present day by day and making those changes on a daily basis with a small ripple effect over time, in my opinion, is how we get there. Mm-hmm. Right. And whatever you're choosing to do, it's how you really bring things back to earth and you win in the long game.
Yeah. It reminds me of, because I told you I did an interview earlier today too with Mario, because we talked about this, the idea of impact, right?
Yeah.
So what is your deep down desire? I want to create impact. I want to leave a legacy. I want to have influence to be able to create positive change, right?
Yeah.
And then when you think on that on the macro level, you're like, well, how do I do that? Well, I need to create a massive podcast with millions of downloads. No, you don't. You need to start here first. Yeah. And then your way of being actually starts to create that ripple.
Yeah.
And the best example that I have of it was what I experienced for you in the last couple of weeks with this challenge that we were just referencing to, is that, so you kind of alluded to it, that you were down this journey, you met this guy and then decided to jump into this program. And part of this program is these challenges that they do consistently. And I'll share some information about it when we publish this podcast too, because I want to be a conduit to that as well.
Yeah.
But that's what I saw from you, was that, you even referenced that, like, you were like, I want to be a part of this. What can we do? How can we do this? And Cam even slowed it down and just said, like, just be a participant.
Totally.
and then be the example that you want to see in the world. Like, let's go Gandhi on this thing, man. You
Absolutely. And that's where, I learned a lot. Again, it was instant grab. It was like, okay, I want to be a part of this. How do I do it? Let's do it tomorrow. Let's have a call. Let's blah, 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 blah. Right. It's like, as we do. And I'll tell you, over the journey now, oh my gosh, I realized the work that you have to do in here to be able to do it outwards and help others, right? You have to heal yourself, and you have to really learn the work. And there's many things that aren't in a book. Yeah. Right. And so I'm glad he did that and pushed back on me. And it's I've learned so much more. I'm so much further along. And I truly believe I can help influence people more now, but I'm still not there. And we're talking through a lot of different things, but it's magical how you can, once you start to go down that path, it takes time. Yeah. Just like everything. It's it's experience. And then it being through the challenges too, I'm learning people now a lot more too, right? I'm observing things a little bit differently. Many videos and stories and deep stuff that's shared, but it's human response. It's what's being brought up and why people are bringing up certain things and the way we all do it. And hell, I'm in it. I'm sharing all the same stuff, but also trying to digest, as many learnings as I can to be able to be influential going forward. Yeah. So you challenged me earlier, so I'm going to flip the coin and do the same thing. Okay. Fair. The idea of there's so much more to learn and you're not quite there. Why do you believe that to be true? I think some of it's going to come through experience, just through time. I don't think it's lack of ability, because I think I have the ability. I feel I need to be more kind of trained, as we all do, right? Just kind of like, I don't have any of the formal stuff, which some of it's not formal, but in looking at the experiential side of how I'll be able to respond to people with bringing these things forward, I don't know if right now I can formulate amazing responses, if that makes sense. But by watching and observing and soaking in a lot more, I feel like I'll gradually get there. And I do want some sort of formal training. It's funny you mentioned that. Today is D-Day for this is a tough one for me, because it's the guy I resonate with the most in the breathwork space. When I found him, I think I found him through Aubrey Marcus's social media. I was watching a video live of him this morning, and Jules walked by the office. I was like, when I see his face, it warms my heart. When I hear his messaging constantly, and his program deadline was today, and I didn't apply. And I've been thinking about it for 4 days, 5 days. There's a very large price tag, but I could have made it work. But it's interesting. I feel like I wasn't spoken to as powerfully as I needed to jump in. And so it's an interesting one. I don't know. It's one of those ones I'm like, I don't know if I made the right decision, because he's not going to launch it. It's the first one he's ever put out for facilitator training, and he's not going to do it again for a year. But one of those ones, I made the decision. I was like, I don't feel a really strong calling, so I don't feel I should do it yet. So I think there's other work that I need to do. I don't think, when I talk about this journey, I don't think that's going to be the end all be all is just the breathwork space for me. I think it's going to be a lot more holistic with other elements into it. And I feel that's why, I don't know if I was hesitant or if the answer that I got was appropriate, and I should be stepping back from that for now. Yeah. So that was long-winded and kind of trailed off, but it was honest though. That's the brain. Yeah. And I can relate. I can see myself in you in many cases when I've been down this journey before too. And I'm still in that space too, because it never goes away, right? There's always a tendency to say, I'm not quite ready, or I could use some more training, or I need more experience, or what if this question comes up and I don't know the answer, or whatever it is, right? Yeah. But the one thing that I've really grounded myself in lately, and I'll just flow you some direct feedback so that you can hopefully allow it to land, is all of that stuff is great to have, aspire to it. Absolutely. I'm going to be the same way, man. Like, I'm constantly going to be seeking and learning and doing the next thing and questioning myself, and then going, nope, my higher self says that you are enough right now, you know? But literally, from the kind of work that you're talking about, whether it is that you're serving, people in the sales space, if you do decide that this is going to be the tie-in with like the business side with the spiritual side, right?
Maybe, who knows? Maybe it's something else. Like, who knows what it's going to be? But to me, it's presence and it's integrity and accountability to yourself, right?
Yeah.
Greatest version of self. Knowing that, and I said this on the podcast this morning too, that I am, as you are, the greatest version of myself right now.
Today.
It's impossible to not be, right? Does
Yeah.
that mean that we don't aspire to be greater? Of course not. I think that's the characteristic ultimately that keeps us driving forward.
Totally.
Right? And people, it inspires the shit out of people when they see others that are willing to leap off the cliff first and say, grab my hand, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know everything, but I know enough
Yeah.
at 1 to 5 steps ahead of that person to be able to guide, right?
Totally.
Because you've been that for me, man. Like and I don't know if I've said that out loud, but I referenced the idea of like the cold plunge. Like I asked to come over to your place. I was like, dude, I got to see this cold plunge. I'm like, how do you do, like, what?
Yeah.
You know, I've seen the videos or Googled it, but then you start to see, you know, like the $3,000 temperature controlled cold plunge. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not investing money into this
No,
shit, you know?
you can buy some pretty cool ones these days. I looked at them too.
Incredible, right?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
But yeah, then I saw your horse trough in the backyard
Yeah.
with a sheet of plywood on it, right?
Totally.
And I thought, yeah, I can do that. And within 2 weeks, I think it was, I went down there. I brought Logan, our oldest son, with me, and I was like, we're going to buy a horse trough. And he's like, what, Daddy? You know?
Yes.
But I had it on the deck, right? And then the rest of it was just kind of like, take the leap, right?
Yeah.
And it's been good to just be able to, you know, even just share a quick
banter
video
back and forth. It's like with that, we've been doing it, and it's you doing that is a testament though to who you are. You're a doer.
Yeah.
Because do you know how many people I've actually gotten in that tank and shown that tank, and not a single one has bought one and got in it. Oh, yeah. This is cool. I'd love to have one of these. Oh, this is okay. So buy one. It's $150.
It's $150.
It'll change your bloody life.
Yeah.
Your day to day. You did it like 4 or 5 days later, and I was like, oh shit, yeah, fuck yeah, Trev, that's wicked. And yeah, so good on you. It was, again, it's, you know, those that take the action.
Yeah.
All I did was put a small idea.
You planted a small idea, but you also led by example, right? Because I saw, again, this is going back to that challenge that we were both in. You enrolled a whole bunch of people in your family to show up for themselves. Like, let's make sure that this is phrased properly too. There was nothing to sell. It was literally just you and the way that you were being, and other people, because I heard it, and it wasn't from your words. It was your family saying this. Is like, I saw a shift happen in Michael that made me say, the fuck do I got to lose here? Like, because they were relating in their own life of like, something's missing here. I don't know what it is, but whatever he's drinking, I want a little bit of that, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Which is scary shit for people, because they're kind of like, what did I get myself into? You know?
Absolutely.
And you knew that I've taken enough of these jumps that you actually gave me a little bit of insight about what to expect. And I was like, that sounds freaking cool, right? But like, if I said,
I still had hesitation to even invite you, you know, because I know I don't think I know a person besides Ryan or Cam or like someone I know in the course that would jump into this and be comfortable. You know, I know you've challenged yourself in many, many ways, but I was like, I know the structure, and I know in the first few minutes of every call, we're dancing. We are dancing on a screen with a bunch of people. That is generally not comfortable for 97% of the population, right? And that as a first impression could be like, what the hell is this crap, right? But you saw the magic behind it all. That's one small component that brought everything together. And same with my family members. I was surprised as hell. Amazing. It touched my heart. You know, and that's we've talked about the things, some of the business things I want to do, and that's a big reason behind is because I don't feel I can have some of these conversations with those in my life.
Keep talking. I got to plug my computer in before it dies.
Yeah,
that'd be a bad way to end this part of the interview.
But but in just doing the work, right?
All right,
it helped influence that, and they jumped in, and it was magic. It was amazing to see.
It was magic, man. There's no other way to put it. It was just literally like
so powerful.
Yeah.
And there's another one coming in 2 weeks, February 14th. So
yeah.
Well, I'm not sure exactly. Actually, we might get this one out next week. We'll see. But regardless, there will be some consistency to these. And I'm of the same mindset too, that I believe that part of my purpose in this world is to help amplify the healers of the world. And I refer to them that way now, because there's all other kinds of labels too, but like creative,
seeker, you know, like there's all of these words, but I want to refer to it as healers because there's business coaches that are healers.
Yeah.
There's body work and breath work and meditation and yoga and all
Absolutely.
of that side of things that are healers, right? A lot of times you think of healer and you're like, oh, doctor,
Medicine man, or
yeah. But just anybody that's there to help lift others and to help them shift beliefs and get into a new state of just possibility.
Yeah.
That's part of it, right? Because I know that I've built my, well, it's more than 10,000 hours now. I don't even know what it is, but I've got my 10,000 hours in being able to do that. And it manifests in the shape of this setup right here and this recording and the fact that we're going to chop this up. And this is going to be a piece of your authentic story at this timestamp of life.
Yeah.
Because this is going to change too.
I sure as hell hope so.
You know,
I'm wrong.
Yeah, like your perspectives, the way that you choose to show up. Like even I hear you mention that maybe you were a little hesitant to mention to me about the challenge. Let me just say, I totally understand where you're coming from on that because I get the same way. Danielle challenges me on this constantly when we were speaking about this collective that we're talking about. And then even how I referenced Lewis and how there was this kind of like admiration and jealousy and, you know, all that kind of stuff. Like, I know that what we're talking about, what we're creating here, that Lewis would get a lot out of this too.
Yeah.
So what's stopping me from reaching out to Lewis and saying, hey,
totally,
I've created this thing. You should come for a call. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just saying that out loud as an accountability piece
Yeah.
for myself.
But of
too.
course you go through the motion of overthinking it and you're thinking, wow,
Oh, you've already done the work and look at you. Yeah.
totally.
Yeah.
You've got, who am I to invite you on, you know, no friend and blah, 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 blah. And you go through that motion when really you're bang on.
Mhm.
That's right. And that's exactly the thought process I went through with you. I was like, you know, you're definitely a lot further along than me in this space and you have so much more knowledge. And I was like, yeah, you might think it's, you know, kind of hokey and blah, blah, blah. But you weren't the only one I had that with. I had that with, you know, some other friends. Just because we overthink it, we do that. And of course, everybody who committed to that process with InBody was amazing. The results were incredible.
Yeah.
And we had, of the X amount that were in the group, we had at least 40 people fully committing, I would say. And you know, there was some deep stuff and some amazing work that happened for everyone.
Yeah.
Literally.
And it's the integration of the intention, I think, is the biggest thing. That's the best way to describe this challenge too. And because it is the actual physical, like, show up, you know, like it's one thing to make an intention and state a declaration. It's another thing to like, now go do it, you know, and be accountable to it. Not to the point where you're going to be punished, but to the point where, like, you know, that if you say with integrity that this is what I'm going to do, and then you don't, you've only let yourself down.
Totally. You're sitting there at night being like, why didn't I do that live video? All I had to do was come up with one of my small truths and share it. And then, you know, you can do that work backwards to say, yeah, really, why didn't you? Where's the real why behind that? But yeah, you're only shooting yourself in the foot for sure. Yeah.
And that actually speaks to one of the other things that I was wanted to talk with you about too, even was this idea of speaking your truth and then what comes up on that journey. Because, you know, again, Jordan Peterson in that interview talks about, like, speak your truth. Will you get what you want? Probably not. But then how the hell do you know what you want? So you may as well speak your truth, because it's the adventure of your life. And if you're going to end up somewhere, you may as well end up in that place based on you speaking the truth.
But you've lived it truthfully. Yeah.
And then, so that really landed for me. And then, you know, in my podcast, this is a piece of it, right? Is actually just having conversations like this. Because not to say that my old interviews weren't deep, but they were different than this, you know?
Yeah.
And I've been sharing more online and at the same time, like, facing that fear, because that was the story that I committed to changing when I stepped into the challenge that you invited me to, right? Was this, like, I can't speak my truth out loud, because if I get negative feedback, I'm going to feel hurt. I'm going to feel discarded. I'm going to potentially alienate and isolate family that won't want to talk to me. I'm going to get angry if somebody doesn't agree with me. And I can tell you right now, man, that after the last 2 weeks of speaking my truth and being very intentional about it, and at the same time, like speaking my truth, but then also just like constantly thinking like, should I say it that way or should I say it that way?
Yeah. Yeah.
That all of those things, those fears that I thought of have absolutely come up. Every single one of them.
Crazy. Yeah.
I get people that have differing opinions that
No
give
question.
me feedback on my posts.
Yeah.
I feel it in my body, this kind of like wanting to be right, but then consciously going like, wait a second, what am I trying to be right about here?
I think hold that right there. What are you trying to be right about? You know your truth. So who are you trying to prove it to? Right. I think that's a huge pivotal point right there, because I agree with what's going on in the world right now. And speaking your truth on any topic, it's, you know your truth. So you don't need to fight anybody else on it. You don't need to convince anybody else that you're right. Your truth is their truth. It's not. It's never going to be the way, regardless of the topic, right? It's and I've seen people get caught up in that, especially with what's going on right now. But it's we know our truth, we know how we feel about it, and that should be that, because totally you can really turn it into something else in a negative light if you really try to fight it and fight for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's such an interesting dance to be in, I want to call it, because when I'm very conscious of like saying, look, this is my truth, and I'm being transparent and honest about the fact that I know that I don't know everything. I'm not a scientist.
Yeah, totally.
I don't have decades and degrees and Nobel Prizes and all of that kind of stuff, but I have a belief, and it's shaped around these things. And I'm curious about what I don't know. And I'm, humble to say when I don't know something. But then you see something that's so polarizing opposite from what you think, and you just think, how could somebody possibly think that way? And then you naturally, I know my tendency is to want to change their beliefs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah, of course.
So my conscious, intentional responses, and I'm not perfect at this. I feel like it's still I'm working the muscle,
Yeah.
is to just lead with love.
Totally.
Lead with love. I just keep saying, like, what would I say if I was leading with love? Knowing that, like, one of the comments that I responded to recently was to say something like, it's all good, we have differing opinions, why don't we just virtually hug it out, was my response, right?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, when I posted that, I was like, that's leading with love. She did not take it that way. She thought that I was being a condescending asshole. And then naturally it got me questioning, like, did I say it in that way? Like, it's such a game.
All you can do is feel sorry for that person.
I know,
because they're not, obviously, right? And again, I don't know, he could go around in circles about it, but it's anytime you see any of that negative stuff, it's just like, I feel sorry for you that you're so consumed by that, and you don't have clarity to step outside and say, everybody is going to have different opinions, as we talked about earlier, right? And our opinions are shaped on our life. I mean, you could say nature nurture, right? It's like, but there's a component that it's what we grew up in our environment. And especially the immediate last few years, if you have friends that were affected or not, if you think people high up, or you're a science person, or you're this person, or what have your influences been, or whether you were watching the media and believing it, right? And all of the above. All we can all do is do our best with our critical minds.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, we've talked in length about this, but none of us really know what the fuck's going on. We don't know what's going on. We don't. So we do our best to come up with our best solutions,
information,
and results, and what we feel is best for our families and our livelihood, our day-to-days.
Yeah.
But everybody's going to be different.
Yeah.
And respect others' opinions.
Yeah.
Because the last thing we want is to be divided on this stuff. It's not. We're going to have divided opinions, but as humans, we shouldn't be divided just because we have different opinions.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and from that context, like, a person, you never know what. In fact, I actually invited, or I didn't ask the person to tell me this, but I actually presented the question of saying, like, look, I have no idea how all of this stuff, because there's a lot of things to unpack with regards to COVID and pandemics and everything else. I have no idea how this has impacted you and your family, but that was my outreach to say, like, I realized that like I have zero clue about what you've brought with you over the years of childhood trauma, current experiences, loss of income, loss of family members in some cases. Like, how can you not be empathetic to that? Like, this is definitely never a one-sided, like, stop the mandates, open everything up because you're wrong and this is right. Like, that's inconsiderate. That's not compassion.
No, absolutely. And that's it. That's why it's such a complex topic, and we're all living it together, right? So, but I can say what we've seen recently is in my opinion, very special to see with the unity of the convoy stuff. You know, I'm sure there's some silly opinions. There's a small fringe minority within the fringe minority, but there's a small number in there that are there for the wrong reason. But I think the majority were there for the right reason. And you see people of all opinions coming together to say, let's be done with this, you know, and let's take our freedoms back, live our lives again. Yeah. So it was special to see.
Yeah, it is for sure. And I think it does come back to, again, of like how important it is to do this self-work and know that if you try to consume all the information and all the sides and take on the weight of the feelings attached to all of that stuff, you will literally kill yourself.
Yeah.
Like, there's no other way to put it. Like, there's science that actually proves how much, like, and I can even speak to what I was saying the other night. Like, when I was in a back and forth and I was consciously trying to like lead with love, I felt it, man. Like, I felt it here in my chest. I felt it in my heart. And then I caught myself. I was like, oh shit, I stopped breathing. Like, that, something that simple, you know. I was just like holding my breath and I was like, wait a second, whoa, like, stop, breathe, clear your mind.
The physical effects are massive, right? You're getting caught up and just going through it. Not stepping outside a little bit and being conscious. And that's wild. But you thought about it, so you did eventually, right? It just took you that extra step.
And I think that's one of the things that you have just an intuitive sense, which is part learned and part just who you are as a person, you know, is the ability to not only do that yourself too, knowing that you're not perfect. You have moments, right? Like, we both got kids that are under 5. Like, Jesus, these kids piss you off every once in a while. There's no way around it. But just to consciously choose something different, and then to put simple practices in to shift from a self-regulation standpoint, which has such a massive ripple effect, like not just in your physical well-being, but even in how your kids will become adults and how they will parent. Like, it's so critically important. And that's, I think, one of the things that I am feeling this desire to argue online, but at the same time catching myself and saying, don't try and be right on this, but to just like, are we measuring the right things right now? Can we measure the impact of a smile or a hug?
Totally.
Or a handshake or a high five.
Facial expressions in general. You know, if you talk about that briefly, and we don't want to go too far down this. I find this topic consumes so much time. But anyways, you know,
we're still good for time, by the way.
Kids sitting next to each other in class, not knowing if their friend is sad or if they're smiling or if whatever, but they're not seeing facial expressions. That is so sad to me. And it doesn't make any sense, right? It's a small piece in a massive thing that's going on, but that one hurts me for some reason. I'm so glad my kids are not in, you know, school right now. They're in preschool.
Me and you both
have that. And my brothers are, and he's pulled them out. He's homeschooling, and I would probably do the same because, it's just heart-wrenching to think of what they're going through. And we can go on. We know there's these extreme cases of kids that are older, suicide and mental illness and all this stuff, and it's sickening. This should not be happening. And it's just darn sad. It is.
There's lots of those stories, and of course, naturally, what you look for, what you focus on, you will attract and you will see more of, right? So being able to be open-minded to all of these different perspectives and possibilities is important on that too. But it's hard to, I reference this all the time. It's kind of like when you open that door and you take a peek inside, you're like, you can either choose to pretend like you didn't see that, or you can just go, all right, like, I need to be a part of the change here. Without even knowing. And it's kind of alluding back to what we were saying before. It's like, you could go take another course or do a breathwork session and say, I'm not ready until this, but like, dude, you've cracked the door open already and you've seen the impact, and it's been very personal for you and your wife.
Yeah.
And
you
your
can't
dad.
look back. It's interesting you bring that up, because I have these moments still. I'm still killing my ego. I'm still getting rid of my old self. I am. I was a life of the party, not drink all the time, but like if I show up at something, and I'm not talking in my kids' days in my most recent years, but that was who I was, right? And it's interesting. I show up now and I might have one drink, I might, but I might not. It's not important to me anymore. But you talk about, it's funny, when I had these discussions with Cam, we talk about taking the red pill or the blue pill with breathwork, and with this world, this whole fitness world. Once you see the clarity you have, the energy you have, all of that, why would I want to go back to, Sunday morning hangovers and eating crappy food? And because your food's such a big part of your vibration too, and all of it's interconnected. And is looking behind the curtain tougher? Yeah, absolutely it is. It's more challenging, but it's also more rewarding. And I also know what's real. I'm not hiding anything anymore. I'm not trying to cover it up. I'm facing it head on and having real deep relationships. And that's where the magic happens. Right. I'd much rather live in that world than the other.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty special place. It really is. And actually Danielle really grounded me in this the other day too, because I used the reference of like speaking on stage, that there's this incredible high and then this almost low that happens. And then a conversation like this, like incredible high, like I want to have conversations like this all the time,
Yeah.
Or I want to see the look on my kid's face when I take them skating all the time, like that.
Totally.
And she's like, that's not real.
Yeah.
And if we live in a constant state of that high bliss vibration without the balancing of and the duality of the lows, and to love the shit out of the lows, like you said, you lose all the essence of life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, because I can think of the extremes, right? Like the ultimate high, whatever it is for somebody, maybe it's that fame that you're aspiring to from the ego self, but then the lows could be the death of a loved one,
Yeah.
They can be that extreme. But what about the in-betweens even too, like the everyday highs and lows, and just being able to see things differently. You referenced it, the idea of like getting up in the morning and just going, putting your feet in the grass.
Yeah.
It's a high.
Yeah.
If you choose to do it.
I think it was another one of Dr. Peterson's podcasts. Actually, I watched a clip yesterday. That's funny you mentioned this, because he talked about this, our moments in life, right? And he's like, life has its high moments and has its lows, but what you need to make special, what you need to practice and hone is the 10 minutes when you walk in your house and you and your wife interact. Is when you sit at the kitchen, the dinner table, and you talk to your kids and your wife. Make that special.
Yeah. Because
when you do the multiplier on that is a big portion of your life.
Yeah.
Right. And they're those tiny ripple effects. Right. Those are the important moments. Those are the mundane, but that can be made special. And if you can make that special, that's life.
Yeah.
Right. And if you can make that happy and that those regular things, happy times. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those are the most ones people overlook, because it's the same thing over and over in the everyday. I
think of just recently, we've been, when we're done our work day, because we're working from home, this is the office / kitchen downstairs / wife's office.
Yeah.
But we come upstairs now and we go straight into the playroom and we just put on music for 10 minutes and dance with the kids.
Yeah.
And they love it, like
Totally.
they don't even know what they're doing half the time. They just want to spin and flip and do things, but they're just so happy,
It's an energy release. It's a bonding moment. It's great. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Love that.
Being very conscious of all those things, and even the sitting at the table, because we've fallen into patterns ourselves too, where like my wife likes The Young and the Restless, so she records it and she watches it, and I usually stand up in the kitchen and eat, and the kids are over on the table eating, and we were like, how about we just turn everything off and just be present with each other
totally,
even if it's just 10 minutes. Like it doesn't need to be an hour and a half of anything.
No, it's
it's
small,
like exercise even too, like get down and do 20 push-ups in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to be an hour long, this big thing and all this equipment.
Just get a bit of movement going, right? Or as you say, do those small changes, and they lead to bigger ones. We did it recently with the kids too, at the cabin. You know, we're at the cabin, so it's silly that we even bring the iPads, but we were getting in the habit of bringing the iPads for the kids. And the bickering and the, I don't want to watch this, I want to watch this and this, and holy so we went up last weekend and we were like, the iPads don't exist. They're here. They don't exist.
Yeah.
It was magic. The kids just played and we played with them, and yeah, we did some dancing, we did whatever. Whole different world, right? And it's us stepping outside of those everyday scenarios and making minor tweaks. And if we fall back into the routine, who cares? As long as you're stepping out again, right?
Yeah,
because that used to be the everyday. So if you're winning one day a week, that's a change in a positive direction. And eventually, if you turn it into 2-3, great. But don't penalize yourself if you're slipping back for, days in between.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to that intention, behavior, habit, way of being, right?
Yeah.
Start with one. I think that's one of the other things too. Like, I just keep referencing back to this big graphic of like oneness and self-actualization and that type of thing. And then all of these things, you try and do them all at once, and you're likely going to fail.
Yeah.
Because you just literally cannot, in your human form, scatter yourself in so many directions.
It's overwhelming. Yeah.
The cold plunge has been that for me. I was like, I sat in it 2 nights ago when I busted through 2 inches of ice, and I was like, I do not want to fucking go in this thing tonight, But then I actually turned on the camera and I was like, I do not want to fucking go in this thing, but I'm going to do it anyways, because I know that in a week from now, which as of the recording here is Monday, I'm going to either commit to doing this fitness and health routine that will become a way of being, or I won't, or I'll tell myself a story and I'll just be out of integrity, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm going to have a day where I'm going to be so bloody sore that I'm not going to want to do anything.
Yeah.
But just jump in the pool, just go.
Totally.
Even if it's just 5 minutes of rolling on the floor.
Yeah.
Something, like I don't have to freaking do 100 burpees every day.
No.
Just do something. Keep the momentum going. That's how the habits get created.
Big
right?
time. Yeah. It's just something and small, as you say.
Yeah.
It's so simple and minute. That's one reason I picked this up. The Daily Stoic. I'm not.
Yeah. Show that in the camera. Actually,
great little book here. And one of my
there you go.
My newer habits I want to create is journaling. I can reflect and sit down. But I haven't been doing it consistently. So what this book here offers is it's 366 days of writing and reflecting on the art of living. So each day it has like a prompting, thought-provoking question in the morning and the evening. So brief, paragraph, whatever, but it's getting me doing it twice a day and with a leading question, right? So for me, it's just, I want to build a habit. And it's interesting because sometimes I'm doing this and then I grab my journal and I write a page as well. Right. But I just wanted to create those habits. And that's been one small game changer for me.
Yeah. Pen to paper. That's where like we started off talking about this. Right. And I'm just so comfortable and natural with the conversation with the camera and speaking. And so therefore I record everything and I'm like, this is my journal. It's so different when you actually pen to paper though.
Big time.
It really is. It's almost like it's something registers and lands with your
It surprises soul, you what comes out. Yeah. If you don't filter it.
It just writes. Even if it's incoherent sentences sometimes.
Exactly. You don't worry about, whether it's making sense or, where you're putting your commas and whatever. You let it flow and it really goes. It's totally, unique. Man. It's your brain spewing all the thoughts, emotions, information, whatever's coming at that time.
Yeah. And iterating on it. We won't be able to see this on the video, but I showed you this, Mike, before.
Yeah, love it.
This Dragonfly Collective and truth transcends illusion and all these words that represent it and all the pieces on the outside. Like, if I actually really think about this is 5 years in the making. Like, that graphic right there was formulated through the constant iteration of doing the Lifebook program, leaning into it, finding pieces that I like, finding pieces where I was like, a little disconnected there, doing the Change the Story challenge, going to a live transformational experience, reading a book,
Totally.
All of these things just kind of culminate to make their little wins along the way that
Yeah.
help you just formulate thoughts that then become intentions that
Yep.
can become a vision. And then you actually
Absolutely.
feel grounded. And that feels like it feels like a North Star to me.
Yeah. Yeah. You
When-
can probably go back further than 5 years with,
Oh yeah.
with the,
I'm just thinking to,
what's pulling into that right there. Right. It's, yeah.
totally, man. So speaking of that, knowing that having a vision, having clarity on a vision, knowing that we're constantly revisiting it, that we are, challenging our thoughts and beliefs on things. Where do you find yourself right now in this moment, knowing that like when I do these podcasts, part of my intention is that we speak honestly and truthfully about like, here's where I'm at. This is what I believe to be true.
Yeah.
And then in 3 months or 6 months or a year or whatever, we come back to it and we reflect. And I'll just give you an example. Like Danielle was a very extreme example of this because she was somebody that I had known for like 3 years, and I had attracted her into becoming a mindset mentor in one of my programs. And I say that just because it was a weird way that we actually got connected, and it was just meant to be kind of thing,
Yeah.
But she was a mindset mentor, which had some limitations just in the way that it's even articulated, right? It's like mindset. Okay, well, it's one layer deep. It's your mind. That's it, right? It's not your body. It's not your breath. It's not all these, it's not your being or your energy. And in February, when we did that interview, she hadn't fully stepped into the spiritual teachings and the transmissions and just the mentoring and the coaching and just the way of being of who she's become now.
Mm-hmm.
And is still evolving into, and will never end. But 6 months later, it's like a completely different person. And she went through a massive, I don't know if you know about this, but she went through a massive, very painful personal experience physically, where she was like, just like her whole left side of her body was completely shut down, like locked up. Yeah, like I forget what it was, 3 weeks or 3 months where she was basically bedridden. And she looks at it and then phrases it now as like an upgrade. Like she literally was receiving an upgrade and had to go through that in order to step into this next phase.
Yeah.
Right. So with all that in mind, here's the question. What's got you to here is all intentional, on purpose, exactly how it was supposed to be. Right.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself now? What do you see? You can go as far ahead as you want here. What is the next month, 3 months, 6 months, 5 years? What does it look like, man? Just talk through it.
I mean, I really resonate. It's interesting that you say the word upgrade, and that I really do feel like I'm absolutely coming into my true mission and who I'm meant to be, and so much can't find a better word but realness to me as an individual. And I'm now able to bring that to my family and to not just my immediate family but close friends and stuff. I find myself in conversations and I have such a deeper context to those in the way I'm looking at it, the way I'm listening. So I truly feel that I've expressed this is the space I want to be in. I do. And whether that does become some sort of business or sales coaching mixed with the breath work and the high performance stuff, I'm not sure. I've gone back and forth. I really have. I brought up Lucas Mack earlier. He's a breathwork. Can't call him a mentor. I don't really know him, but I certainly look up to him. And I love how he has a balance of healing and trauma work, but also high performance, helping high performance individuals. So, he's doing visualization, manifestation combined with breathwork. I think that's magic,
Yeah.
So cool to see. So I'm trying to find that. So I don't really know where the exact projection is. And I think that's where, for me, and we've talked about this a little bit, is where I think my true next progression is a podcast of my own to really talk this stuff out, because I feel individuals that I'm going to have on there, I'll learn more from. I feel like in topics I'm going to bring forth, it's going to shape me a little more, and clarity is going to present itself. But I think that'd be a good tool for me to do that. And really, it takes a lot of reflecting. It takes a lot of reflecting when I talk about that quiet time and the cold plunges, and it's making these practices consistent and making sure the energy and the vibe is high, because that's when you attract these different items as well, right? So I had a call with a friend in Costa Rica about an opportunity this morning, talking to Cam about opportunities, and then I'm looking at my own and whether I want to do it that way. So right now I'm putting them all out there, and dissecting and then trying to listen to this and say, maybe I do need to do it all on my own. I don't want anybody else, right? So that's the process. I can tell you with certainty that I truly think, you know, I shouldn't say I think, I should say I'm going to launch this fucking podcast. Still a lot of work to do, and I'll probably lean on you a little bit for some advice, no question there. But I think that's going to be a great tool for me to define some next steps. And if I'm to really look further down the line, I might, you know, we're sneakily thinking of some idea to maybe head to Costa Rica for just a year as well and let the creative juices flow. And so maybe, you know, it's we're working in the morning on the laptop with doing this work, and then I'm surfing in the afternoon. You might be next to me, who knows? Right. And these are some things that can happen, but I definitely want to find a self-sustaining job on to be virtual and help influence and impact people, and while keeping my creativity high and the adventure and experiential part of my life high, so that I can keep building the energy within myself to give to others. So I'm going to keep digging deeper on this then too. So when that reality exists and we're hanging out in Costa Rica and our kids are playing in the waves and we're out surfing and you're doing your podcast and you're creating financial abundance for your family, where you maybe can't even see it right now, what does that feel like? I just smiled while you were saying it. Right. And that's what it's about. It is. And you saying that actually just reminded me that I do need to visualize and manifest that more. I need to sit with that, and I need to listen to the waves, and I need to see myself feeling the wind, you know, while working on my laptop at our place that's near the beach, and knowing that in 2 hours, I'm going to walk down and join my family on the beach and see my little dudes on a longboard and take them out and go for a jog on the beach. And that feels invigorating, right? It feels amazing. Yeah. And then eventually, you know, bring that energy home and influence others here. Yeah.
Well, I think that actually is a great way to wrap up what this conversation is. And ultimately the friendship that I built with you. And what I think is so amazing about this though, man, is that you and I obviously moved 2 doors down from each other, because I don't even know if we mentioned that on the podcast, but we literally lived to 2 doors down from each other. Yeah. Or 3 doors down. There you go. Maybe we'll see. We get some sponsorship. We'll get some the bands coming in and stuff. But that wasn't by accident, you know. No. And neither was, you know, whenever we bumped into each other for the first time. I can't even remember. It was probably like pushing strollers, because it was a couple of years ago.
Sure it was. Yeah.
You know, just kind of walking around the streets of like, hey, what's happening, man? You know, like, oh, you got kids the same age as mine. Cool, totally. You know, like.
Yeah, it was a couple of those at first. And
yeah. I want to be around people that have kids and know the pain I'm going through.
Yeah. And we want to look at manifesting. We want to look at asking the universe. I can say I manifested you. Totally. I could. I had many conversations with my wife about the awkwardness of you know, meeting and being able to have intellectual conversations with friends. You know, you get to a certain age in life where, again, there's drinking buddies, and then there's people that you're able to have those conversations and have real visions with. And I'm past the drinking buddy stage. It's not a habit of mine anymore, really. Right. Yeah. And I was looking and I was like, babe, I work at home. You know, I don't really talk to people at the gym. I'm in my zone. I'm not really part of any groups. You know, how do you do that? What am I supposed to like send dudes DMs? And kind of weird.
Hey, look kind of cool. So you want to play tennis? We live in the neighborhood. Yeah.
I've never really thought of it that way, right? But I feel we have that relationship where we can have these conversations. I feel we have many more to come, many things to work on together, and it's cool. And it's really it's neat. I agree. It didn't happen by accident.
No. And it's the culmination of a few other things here too. Like I've kind of alluded to this graphic I'm talking about, but like, you know, everything that I hear you saying, I already see that for you in the future, because I know personally some of the things that you might be going like, well, I think I want to do this, but like, where the fuck do I start? Dude, I've been doing it for 15 years, you know? Yeah. And I'm just speaking like strictly from the marketing and the technology and the like, just me doing this interview right here. We just created a piece of content that now becomes a bit of a launching pad for you to decide, is what you said here your authentic truth? And if it is, jump off the cliff. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And if it's not, that's cool too, whatever, but at least it's something. And then the other piece of it is though too, is that I'm a huge believer in the idea of the collective of like who you spend your time with. Everybody knows this from the like
Totally.
the 5 people you spend the most time with.
The sum of,
And it's so true. And it's the beautiful part about technology, I think. And naturally, this is an in-person interview. The first time that I've done this just worked out because you're just down the street. But technology, everybody wants to blame the tech for the problems that we have in this world. The social dilemma documentary and stuff, talking about like how it's just evil and all that.
Separation.
But the truth is that like it can also create massive connection. Like some of the contacts and the calls that I have with people, like I've got friends in Costa Rica that I've never met. That I could literally roll up on their place and they'd give me a couch to sleep on tomorrow and take me out surfing, And I can say that for many, many people all over the world. And it's just amazing, right? Like when you find that, you just lean into it and you go, all right, how do I do more of this? How do I spend more time with people like this? And the working title right now is Dragonfly Collective. I don't know if I'll even land on that yet, but it's feeling really good. And I was telling you before, the idea of like the dragonfly on a tarot card, right? And if there's lots of translations, but if you read the one that I read or had read to me actually was, the masks that you have worn to date have served you. Like they're not something that you should be ashamed of. They've served you, whatever that means.
Brought you a purpose in one way or another and brought you to where you are.
And I just think for both of us, like we have a very similar background, even though our sports were different and stuff, but like the mask that I wore was that I'm a hockey player. That's my identity and I'll never be anything else. Right. And then shift into entrepreneur. I am an entrepreneur. I am a this, I am a that. Totally. Right. But when you can surround yourself with people that all just come from the same centered grounding of just knowing that there's a higher self that's available to us here inside, that doesn't have to be impacted by the outer world, but is impacted by the outer world, who you spend your time with is going to have a massive impact on your elevation.
When you talk about masks, are willing to arrive maskless, are willing to arrive, with no ego and open and vulnerable to have the meaningful discussions, the true self discussions, right? And so I think that I love that. That's exciting. Looking forward to seeing what you guys do.
It's pretty cool. Well, it's a part of the future visioning that like you were already articulating. For me, it's a very similar thing. I don't know if it's Costa Rica, but it's likely Costa Rica. It's a beach. It's a place where there's a big property. There's, other buildings on that property that people can come and stay with us. There's a view of the ocean. There is workshops, retreats.
Cool.
There are healers that do breath work. There are yoga. Like my mom teaches yoga. Like I already see it. It's not in my physical reality.
That's the start.
Yeah. And I see you and Julie and your guys' family as a piece of that. And so that's why I was looking forward to doing this, man.
Well, I just heard certain roles in there and I was like, all right, cool. So I got a job at least a little bit of the year.
And I see us, like there's no doubt, like I will be the support system for you to make all of that stuff come true at whatever pace that you want it to be too, because it's all possible, man. And I
appreciate that, because it is, as you say, and you've been through it, it's an overwhelming journey. It's, I've been thinking on it for the past few weeks, but I can say I haven't done, well, that's not true, but I haven't done, an appropriate amount of planning, pen to paper type stuff. So to make it happen, I got to do it. I got to start really, really grinding on it.
Flip the record button on. That's always my first piece of advice for everybody. It is just like you would have seen. I think you saw my first one that I did. It was in the room on the other side of the house over there with the gas fitter in here trying to hook up our stove and a bunch of noise and chaos going on all around me. But I just, looking back on that one, I watched it back a few times and I was like, that was my honest truth. Because
totally at that
I
time,
didn't have a clue what I was even doing, man. I was just like, I'm just going to start.
But you started. You took the first step, right?
And my most loyal listeners were my family.
Which is awesome. And
then, come full circle on all of this. I don't know if they're still listening or not, because I'm speaking my truth and I may be ruffling feathers a little bit, but
it's your truth.
But it's my truth. Exactly. And there's a lot to be said too for comfortability with the silence too. And that's again where I'm sitting, right? Is like,
Yeah.
I know when I'm sitting and reflecting, it's usually when something's really downloading to me the most, right?
Totally.
When you're not trying to be busy and over. Yeah.
No, and that's it. It's not trying to block thoughts out. You just give yourself that space. You give yourself that space, and clarity arrives.
Yeah.
Ideas arrive. Yeah.
Totally, man. Right on. Well, I think let's wrap it on that. We can we'll do a part 2. I don't know when, maybe in a week, maybe in a month, maybe in 3 months. Who knows, man?
Yes.
But
Cool.
Thanks so much for doing this. This is fun.
You bet. I do have one question for you at the end here too. I didn't bring that to sneak it in for
shoot.
This. When I read this one this morning, is very thought provoking. So I'm going to read it in a different context here. Are you cultivating the invincibility of your power to choose? So I'll read it one more time because there's some power there, and there's some big words that you have to kind of break apart. But are you cultivating the invincibility of your power to choose?
Am I the creator of my own reality of knowing that choice is always possible? That's kind of how I heard that.
So you don't have to answer it. We can end on that. It's a thought. It was more just it really hit me, and it really made me stop. And I was like, oh, that's a good one. And I had to piece it out just like that to be like, okay, cultivating. Yeah.
Love it, man. Anybody that's listening, watching this, answer that question for yourself. And if you want to read out, or if you want to reach out even too, and just think about what comes up for you, because the Daily Stoic Journal is great, man. I've got a version of that. I just don't have a journal version. So now I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, it's neat.
I got the one that you just read, and it kind of translates the philosophy.
It allows you to, they have weekly pages of that stuff, and it's deep, as you know. And so it's nice to break it up with your own thoughts amongst the questions. Yeah. And things like that. So
yeah. All right. So I guess I'll just have to go and get the journal version now. So.
There you go.
All right, man. Thanks so much for doing this. That was fun.
Yes. Appreciate you, and appreciate you having me on.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Trevor Turnbull Show. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please consider subscribing on my YouTube channel and on your favorite podcast platform, and leave me a review. I'd love to hear from you. Now, until next time, remember, today is a beautiful day of opportunity. Trust that you're exactly where you're supposed to be right now. So be grateful, be curious, and be brave.